Welcome to our deep dive into the fascinating world of habits. I'm really excited to dig into this one because we're all creatures of habit. But imagine if we could actually understand how they work and really harness that knowledge to kind of level up our lives. That's what we're going to try to do today using excerpts from a book called The Inflowfit Method. It's kind of like our roadmap for this deep dive.
Yeah, it's like getting a user manual for your own brain, right? And the book starts off with a stat that just blew my mind. Something like 40 to 80% of our behavior is on autopilot, driven by habits.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So if we're not consciously making all those choices, then
Well, that's where the habit loop comes in. It's this idea of reminders, routines, and rewards.
Okay, so break that down for me. What's actually going on there?
All right, so think of the reminder as the trigger. It's like the thing that kicks off the whole process. It could be something as simple as seeing a bag of chips, sitting on the counter, or feeling that afternoon slump at work. And that trigger links to the routine, the actual behavior, like reaching for those chips or, heading to the vending machine.
Right. And then comes the reward, that feeling of satisfaction, that hit of dopamine that makes the habit stick.
Exactly. Your brain's basically like, hey, that felt good. Let's do that again.
Makes sense. So this whole reward system, it's not just some modern thing, right?
No, not at all. This goes way back. It's deeply rooted in our evolution. For our ancestors seeking out those calorie-dense foods, that was crucial for survival.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, back then, finding a big, juicy piece of fruit, that was like hitting the jackpot.
Yeah, but the thing is, in today's world, those kinds of rewards are everywhere.
Oh, yeah. We're surrounded by temptation.
And it's not exactly serving us anymore. We're constantly bombarded with these cues that trigger those cravings and hijack that ancient system.
So it's like our brains are still wired for a world that doesn't really exist anymore. No wonder it's so hard to resist that donut.
It's a constant battle.
Definitely. So in the book, they talk about this concept of updating the reward value. What exactly does that mean?
Well, it's about recognizing that we have the power to change how rewarding those unhealthy habits actually feel.
Okay, so instead of just trying to ignore the cravings,
we need to shift our focus to the negative consequences of those choices.
So it's instead of just focusing on that initial burst of pleasure from that sugary snack, you're thinking about the potential long-term impact.
Exactly. You start to associate that cookie with feeling sluggish or, maybe even guilty later on.
Gotcha. So you're basically consciously connecting that bad habit with something you want to avoid.
Right. Because if that cookie starts to feel less rewarding, you're less likely to reach for it in the first place.
That makes sense. Now, I know you're a big fan of Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit. And I remember him saying something like, you can't extinguish a bad habit, you can only change it.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite takeaways from that book.
So what exactly did he mean by that?
Well, Duhigg suggests this 3-step process. First, you identify the routine, the reward, and the trigger of your bad habit.
Okay.
Then you experiment with different rewards to see if you can find a healthier substitute. That satisfies that same underlying need.
I like that. So could you give me an example?
Sure. Let's say your habit is mindlessly scrolling through social media every time you feel bored. So the trigger is boredom. The routine is the scrolling. And the reward is that temporary distraction.
Yeah, but that's not a very fulfilling reward in the long run.
Right. So instead of scrolling, you could try something else that provides a similar distraction, but is also more beneficial, like reading a few pages of a book or listening to a podcast.
I like that. You're still getting that break from boredom, but you're also engaging your mind or learning something new. That's a really good way to reframe it. Actually, I remember when I was trying to break my habit of late night snacking, and it took me a while to realize that the reward wasn't just the taste of the food. It was the feeling of winding down after a long day.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So once I realized that, I started replacing the snacking with a different relaxing activity, like taking a bath or reading a book. And it made a huge difference.
That's a perfect example of how understanding the why behind a habit can be so powerful.
For sure. Now, so we've talked about making bad habits less appealing and finding healthier substitutes. But what about those times when the urge is just so strong that it's really hard to resist? What do you do in those moments?
Well, the Inflowfit Method talks about something called the 10-minute rule.
Okay, the 10-minute rule.
Yeah, basically. Instead of giving in to that craving immediately, you delay gratification for just 10 minutes.
Okay, so I'm literally setting a timer.
Yeah, you could. Or just kind of mentally note the time.
Okay, so what's the point of that?
It creates a little space. between your conscious self and that automatic habit response.
So I'm like hitting the pause button on autopilot.
Exactly.
And then what do I do during those 10 minutes?
Anything that helps you break the cycle. Go for a walk, listen to music, meditate, anything to kind of shift your focus.
That's a good tip. I like that. So the 10-minute rule. Any other like strategies for kind of regaining control over those unwanted habits?
Yeah, the book suggests a few other things, like journaling can be really helpful.
Oh, yeah. I love journaling.
It can help you uncover those like root causes
Yeah.
of those behaviors.
Interesting.
Yeah, you start to notice patterns. Like maybe you always reach for sugary snacks when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed.
Yeah, for sure.
And once you're aware of those triggers, you can start to manage them more effectively.
So it's like shining a light on those hidden patterns.
Exactly.
Oh.
Another approach is to try grounding your awareness in the present moment. So let's say you're craving, a big bowl of ice cream. Instead of dwelling on that like immediate pleasure, you shift your focus to how you'll probably feel afterwards.
Yeah, like sluggish and kind of gross.
Exactly. Or you could think about the long-term consequences for your health and energy levels.
So you're basically bringing the future into the present moment.
Yeah, it's a mindfulness technique.
Okay, I like that. Now, there was one more technique in the book that really caught my eye. Punishment before reward. Tell me about that one.
Oh, yeah, that one's interesting. It's kind of like a tough love approach.
Right.
The idea is that if you really want to indulge in that bad habit, you have to earn it by doing something challenging first.
So, for example?
Let's say you really want that cookie. Before you can have it, you have to do 30 squats or something equally challenging.
Oh, wow.
So you're adding a layer of friction, making it less appealing to give in.
And the book even suggests making the punishment something you enjoy.
Yeah, so maybe you listen to your favorite song while doing those squats.
I see. So you win either way.
Right. You either indulge in your habit after a bit of effort, or you skip the habit and still get a positive experience.
I love that. That's so clever. So we've got all these different strategies for tackling bad habits.
It's like a whole toolkit for habit change.
It is. And you know what? I'm actually kind of excited to move on and talk about building new positive habits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where the real fun begins.
I agree. But before we get into that, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with more from the Inflowfit Method. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, so we've talked about breaking bad habits, but what about building good ones? I think that's what people really get excited about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, who doesn't want to like level up their life with some positive new habits?
Right. But it can also feel kind of daunting.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like, where do you even start?
Well, the book actually has some really good advice on that. It talks about the importance of starting small.
Small.
Yeah, like ridiculously small.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So there's this thing called the 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule?
Yeah, it's from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And the idea is you make the new habit so small that it takes less than 2 minutes to do.
Okay, so give me an example.
All right, let's say you want to start a daily writing habit.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to write like a whole chapter, you just commit to writing for 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yeah, just 2 minutes. Anyone can do that.
That's true. I could definitely write for 2 minutes.
Right. And the thing is, once you get started, you're often more likely to keep going.
So it's like tricking your brain into getting started.
Exactly.
I like that.
And those small actions, done consistently, can really add up over time.
So it's all about building momentum.
Yeah, momentum is key.
What else does the book recommend?
Well, it also talks about tagging new habits onto existing ones.
Tagging.
Yeah, so you're basically leveraging those routines that you're already doing every day without even thinking about it.
Like brushing my teeth.
Exactly. So let's say you want to start flossing regularly.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm working on.
You could try flossing right after you brush your teeth.
Oh, I see. So you're basically creating a mental shortcut.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So the existing habit becomes the trigger for the new habit.
Exactly. And it makes it much easier to remember and follow through.
I like that. It takes the pressure off.
It does.
So we've talked about starting small and tagging. Any other like mind tricks for making new habits stick?
Well, the book also talks about focusing on the positive benefits of the new habit.
Okay, so instead of thinking like, ugh, I have to go to the gym.
You could say, I get to move my body and feel more energized.
Yeah, I like that.
It's about shifting your mindset from have to get to.
So I'm consciously focusing on the positive rewards.
Exactly.
And that makes me more likely to stick with it.
Right.
But even with all the right strategies, it still takes effort and discipline to build new habits. So how do we stay motivated and not give up when things get tough?
That's a good question. And it's something that everyone struggles with.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think one of the most important things is consistency.
Consistent.
Yeah. And that often requires planning and discipline.
I could see that.
Like Benjamin Franklin said, if you fail to prepare, you are preparing to fail.
That's so true.
So if you want to eat healthy, you need to plan your meals and have healthy snacks on hand.
Right. If you want to exercise regularly,
Yeah.
you get scheduled in.
Exactly. It's about making it a priority.
Now, one thing I really appreciated about the Inflowfit method is its perspective on failure.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Because I think we all struggle with that fear of failure,
We do.
especially when trying to change our habits.
Right. Like if we mess up, we feel like we've blown it and we give up.
Totally.
But the book encourages us to reframe failure as a learning opportunity.
Oh, I like that.
It's not about being perfect. It's about learning from those setbacks and getting back on track.
Yeah, there's that great quote from Malcolm Forbes, failure is success if we learn from it.
Exactly.
So it's all part of the process.
It is.
And we don't need to beat ourselves up.
Right.
When we stumble,
They don't.
it's about getting back up
Mm-hmm.
and trying again.
Right. And every time you stumble, you learn something.
we do
And
that.
you get a little bit closer to your goal.
So it's a journey,
It is.
not a destination.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of the journey, I think it's important to celebrate those wins along the way.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's easy to get so focused on the end goal that we forget to acknowledge how far we've come,
Right.
and celebrating those wins can really help us stay motivated.
It's like giving yourself a little pat on the back.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess it's important to celebrate in a way that supports our new habits, not sabotages them.
That's a good point.
So maybe instead of rewarding myself with a giant pizza after a week of healthy eating, I could treat myself to a massage or something.
Yeah, or buy yourself some new workout clothes.
That's a good idea. Now, one thing that really fascinated me in the Inflowfit method was the discussion of beliefs.
Oh, yeah. Beliefs are huge.
Because I've always been intrigued by how our thoughts and beliefs shape our reality.
They do. And when it comes to habit formation, our beliefs can either support us or sabotage us.
So give me an example.
Let's say you believe that you're not a morning person.
Okay.
You're probably going to have a really hard time establishing a morning workout routine
Yeah, that makes sense.
because your belief is working against you.
Right.
So the book suggests doing some journaling and self-reflection to try to uncover those limiting beliefs.
So it's like doing a deep dive into your own subconscious.
Exactly.
And once you've identified those limiting beliefs, what do you do with them?
You challenge them.
Challenge them.
Yeah, you look for evidence that contradicts those beliefs.
Okay.
So, if you believe you're not good at cooking, try finding a simple recipe that you enjoy and focus on how good it feels to nourish yourself with a home-cooked meal.
That's a good idea.
And the more you do that, the more those new empowering beliefs will take root.
So it's like rewiring your brain for success.
Exactly.
I love that.
And there's one final piece of advice from the Inflowfit method that I think is really important, and that's to avoid hesitation.
Avoid hesitation.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So when it comes to making decisions, especially decisions related to our habits, those first few seconds are critical.
Okay.
If you hesitate, your brain's old programming kicks in,
Oh, no.
and it starts tempting you with excuses.
It's like my inner saboteur
Exactly.
trying to keep me stuck in my comfort zone.
So the key is to act decisively.
Act decisively.
Yeah.
So when I feel that urge to go for a run,
Put on your shoes and get out the door.
don't even think about it.
Don't give your brain a chance to talk you out of it.
That's good advice.
And the more you do that, the stronger that mental muscle becomes.
So we're basically training our brains
We are.
to respond to those positive impulses and choose the new habit over the old automatic response.
Exactly.
Wow, this is really powerful stuff.
It is.
It's amazing how much control we have over our lives when we understand the science of habit formation
It's all about taking control of those subconscious patterns.
and creating the life we truly want. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this part of our deep dive into habits. But don't worry, we'll be back soon for the final part of this episode, where we'll tie everything together and leave you with some actionable takeaways to apply to your own life. All right, so welcome back to our deep dive into the world of habits.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. But I think it's always good to, recap the key takeaways.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially with a topic as dense as this.
Absolutely.
So what really stood out to you from the Inflowfit method?
Well, I think one of the most important things is just understanding that habit loop, that reminder, routine, reward cycle.
Right.
Once you see how that works, you can start to interrupt those automatic behaviors.
And actually make conscious choices.
Exactly.
Instead of just being on autopilot all the time.
Yeah, we become like masters of our own habits.
Instead of the other way around.
Right.
And I think it's also important to remember that our brains are wired to seek out rewards.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
In our DNA.
Like we talked about with our ancestors.
Right, like finding that calorie-dense food.
Exactly.
It was a big win.
And our brains are still programmed that way.
So the good news is we can actually rewire our brains.
Yeah.
To associate those rewards with healthier choices.
You can hack the system.
We can.
Yeah.
And another thing that really stuck with me was Charles Duhigg's method for changing bad habits by replacing the negative reward with a positive one.
Oh, yeah. That's a game changer.
It is. Because you're not just trying to suppress the craving, you're actually redirecting it.
Yeah, you're giving your brain what it wants, but in a healthier way.
Exactly. And I think it all comes down to understanding the why behind the habit.
The why.
Yeah, like what need is that habit trying to fulfill?
Once you figure that out, you can find a better way to meet that need.
That's so important.
It is.
And of course, we can't forget about those handy little techniques, like the 10-minute rule.
Oh, yeah, the 10-minute rule.
Just hitting the pause button.
Yeah, giving yourself a little space.
To make a conscious choice.
It's amazing how much power there is in that little pause.
It really is.
Yeah.
And what about punishment before reward?
Oh, yeah, that one's fun.
I like that one.
It's like a little challenge.
It is. But in a good way.
Yeah, it makes you think twice.
Before indulging.
Excellent.
Now, when it comes to building new habits, I think the biggest takeaway for me was the importance of starting small.
Yeah.
But
the 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule.
It's so simple.
It is.
That's so effective.
Because anyone can do almost anything for 2 minutes.
Right. It's all about getting that momentum going.
Momentum is key.
It is.
And I love the idea of tagging new habits onto existing ones.
Yeah, that's a great way to make them stick.
It is.
Yeah.
Because you're not having to create a whole new routine.
You're just piggybacking on something you're already doing.
Exactly. Now, of course,
yeah,
we can't talk about habits without mentioning consistency and discipline.
Right.
And planning.
Like Benjamin Franklin said, if you fail to prepare, you are preparing to fail.
It's true.
So important to set yourself up for success.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know what? We also need to be kind to ourselves when we mess up.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because failure is part of the process.
It is. Yeah.
And it's an opportunity to learn and grow. Like Malcolm Forbes said,
yeah.
Failure is success if we learn from it.
Could have said it better myself.
And finally, I think one of the most profound insights from the Inflowfit Method is the power of our beliefs.
Yeah, our beliefs can either make us or break us.
They can. And it's so important to identify those limiting beliefs that might be holding us back.
And challenge them.
Challenge them.
Yeah, don't let them run the show.
That's so powerful.
It is.
Because ultimately, we have the power to create the life we want.
We do.
By understanding how our habits work and consciously shaping them to align with our goals and values.
Well said.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into habits, I just want to encourage everyone listening to take some time to reflect on those underlying beliefs that might be holding you back.
Yeah, what stories are you telling yourself?
Exactly. And once you've identified those beliefs, challenge them, reframe them.
You have the power to change your story.
You do. And remember, building new habits, it's a journey.
It's not a destination.
And it's a journey worth taking. So thank you for joining us on this exploration of habits. We hope you found it valuable, and we'll see you next time.